Greetings, unsettled souls, and welcome back to the Correct Views. Sam I.B. DeGangi reporting for the Media Speaks, and if you're listening on Facebook, that's awesome. I'm going to get to all the news that has already been promised to you in the description, but I absolutely had to address this. I can't prove that the person that I think did this did in fact do it. I was going to call the person out on air, but I didn't. I got into a global warming debate, and I presented fact after fact after fact. ClimateGate, that wasn't good enough. Lord Monckton, that wasn't good enough. As if I created this mystical people out of my head. They went and reported the correct views to Facebook. Facebook pulled it down because you are not allowed to be registered as correct views. You have to have a name, otherwise you have a page and not a profile. You know what? BS, I shut the entire Facebook account down. I then used the thinking part of my brain and opened it up again under the same name. I know this because I'm a fan of bands, and the first time that I had contacted Skinny Puppy, it wasn't Skinny Puppy. It was some person who just took the name. They allow everybody to have everybody else's name. Facebook doesn't stop it. So I just opened up another one and did the exact same thing. You're going to ask why. I did that because I'm not going to capitulate to this and allow them to do it, because then it becomes a matter of me. For instance, I have this InfoWars sticker on my computer. Every once in a while I get somebody that absolutely hates it. You know what? That's because you almost always what you hear is, I hate Alex Jones. But they can never say that they hate his facts. They never have anything to offer that is contrary to what he said. They make it a personal attack against Alex Jones. I get it all the time. Oh, I've got long hair, I'm in a band, I got a tattoo, therefore I must not know what I'm talking about. Somehow you can't enjoy that kind of art without being an idiot. Well, if I call the show Sam DeGangi on Facebook, it now becomes a matter of whether or not you like me or not. And I don't really care, because I am a truth teller. It is true whether or not you like me or not. I am reporting on things. That's why it's called the correct views. You ever see The View that's never right? Well, the correct views. That's why I picked the name. I lay out proof for everything that is on this show. I am a commentator. It doesn't matter if you like me or not. What matters is that I'm out here telling the truth. That is what matters, and that is why, for those of you listening to this, I did the Facebook thing. And if it comes up again, I plan to do so again. All right, guys, now on to the news that is promised to you in the description. I'm going to start with InfoWars. Alan Salazar. And again, we quote we probably have 15 or 20 sources on any given show. So if you don't like one, stay with me. Under Texas bill, cops to collect traffic fines on the spot via credit or debit card. Now, how many of you realize that, for one thing, people are just going to pay the fine to go on with their day? They're not, maybe they're like me. I work midnights. They can't get up in the morning. Well, I can get up in the morning. I usually go to bed around 9 o'clock because I DJ all night, come home, and then do the show. This is going to be used to fleece the public. They're already pulling people over for things that they have never done. What kinds of things? The scam that is the DUI laws in this country. There is no way that a 195-pound man, that would be me, is drunk on 2.5 shots in an hour. But they use that in order to fleece money from people all the time. All the time. Well, you know, alcohol was a factor in this many accidents. You know what? The alcohol level that they're talking about, the accident would have happened whether or not the person had been drinking or not. Oxygen was involved too, but oxygen did it? He was breathing. Just because alcohol was a factor doesn't mean that it was in any way a cause. I mean, just because it was present doesn't mean that it was a factor. I met a man from the Ukraine about, 7 or 8 years ago, and he said that in his country they just pay the cops off. And the way they get around it was things like this, because they were out in the middle of nowhere and there wasn't anybody around for 20 miles, so they would sometimes pay things this way. The cop would just take the money. I know they're not dealing in actual money, but once you have a transaction of a card, you would never tell on a camera what happened. Those are the two things that's going to happen. People are going to pay it just to get it to go away, and they are going to be paying off the police officers. This is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea. A House bill recently introduced in Texas legislature would allow police officers to collect immediate payment from defendants for Class C misdemeanor traffic fines by use of a credit or debit card, completely circumventing the rule of law and the citizen's right to due process. Right now it's optional. Yeah, well, guess what? The Patriot Act was supposed to be temporary. Iraq was supposed to pay for their freedom. Don't believe it. HB number 121, introduced on Monday by State Rep Alan Fletcher, concerns an alternative means of payment of certain criminal fees and court costs. Under the procedure, a peace officer making an arrest of a defendant, one shall inform the defendant of A, the possibility of making an immediate payment of the fine and related court costs by use of credit or debit card, and B, the defendant's available alternatives for making an immediate payment. The bill, still in its initial phase, states, I hope that I play some small role in this being shot down as one of the worst ideas that I've ever heard. We don't need more ways to pay for the fines that we have. We need to find ways for there to be less fines because people are getting fleeced for nothing. The House bill goes on to explain that a peace officer, an arrested defendant, too, may accept on behalf of the court the defendant's immediate payment of the fine and related court costs by use of a credit or debit card, which after the police officer must release the defendant. Well, that's great because I don't carry those things on me, so up there, they're not going to get it. Backers of the bill may attempt to argue it merely provides an additional method for the courts to expedite the collection of outstanding payments and may say, it will free up jail space to be able to hold more criminal defenders or free up court dockets to deal with more important cases. However, should the bill pass, it would deal a devastating blow to the citizenry's right to due process. I can't read today. Which, among other things, mandates an appearance and assessment before a magistrate prior to a case preceding the trial, and would set the legal precedent wherein everyday police officers would be empowered to take on roles of judge, jury, and executioner, and charge related court costs. Execution as in execution of payment, of course. This is a horrible idea. If Texas allows this to go through, I'm telling you, I may never drink the water in Texas. Then again, Texas hardly has any water. Maybe it's a matter of dehydration. KMTR.com. Want to pay your taxes by the gallon or by the mile? How about bringing transportation costs in this country down? Down. Taking the taxes to a great all the federal taxes out of gasoline. That is not indicative of literally necessity. Pulling federal taxes off of it. Bringing the transportation and distribution of goods down. By that I mean freight and goods and retail items being brought in semis. The prices for everything will fall for everyone if you do that. And more people will spend more money on Christmas. That's an Austrian economic idea. That is a libertarian idea. Do you hear that in here? No. What you find is ways to take more money off of you in yet another way. That electric car could save you a lot of money on the pump, but when you buy less gas, you also pay less in gas taxes, which help pay for the road repair. Green energy is gonna save us so much money, right, Kat? As we have more fuel-efficient vehicles on the road, less and less funding to maintain roads, and it just spells disaster, ultimately for our transportation system, said Michelle Godfrey with the Oregon Department of Transportation. So we have to find an alternative. In other words, these tree-hugging bastards have lied to all of you to get you to buy the electric car. that you can't have any room to fit anything in. I'm a keyboardist. There's no way I'll touch one. They've conned you into buying these under the lie of man-made global warming, which isn't happening. Look up ClimateGate. Look up Lord Monckton. Now, you're going to have to pay more because you're not using the gas that they told you not to use, and you would save money by not using. That's the green way. That's the Democratic way. I'm just reading here. The alternative, Godfrey said, is a pilot program starting next year where 5,000 volunteers can pay their road repair taxes per mile rather than per gallon of gas. That's great. People that are living in New York City don't think it's bad, but for people that live where areas where they have to drive, this is another awful idea. This is like awful idea day. It said that is what the legislature kind of landed on after 12 years of research, she said. Pause. 12 years of research. Not that many people owned these cars 12 years ago. That means that they were planning on doing this to you prior to you ever buying the car. See the logic? Yeah, little bell just went off, didn't it? Hit share on this video. That's how I grow. You pay for what you use. So the number of miles you drive is really the best gauge to the impact you are having on the roads and how much you are contributing to their deterioration. Well, that's not true, because these light little cars are supposed to do very little damage. They're much lighter. They don't do the same damage that a gas hogger keyboard player like me uses. That's what they said. That's how it was sold to us, remember? The state concluded a similar smaller test in 2012 and 2013 where volunteers had options of reporting their mileage on their own or using plug-in devices that attach to the car's data ports. Godfrey said the volunteers for the new program would have the same kinds of options. This is some of the dumbest things that I have ever heard. These green idiots are out of their minds. Their hand is always out. It's time we start slapping them. She says the GPS device will determine if your car is on the public road in Oregon, which you would be taxed. Anybody that signs up for this has a pumpkin for a head. You got to be out of your mind. And for those of you that love to say, oh my God, it's more violent these days than ever. U.S. murder drop to 45-year low. Oh, but no, Sam, oh, that can't be. I'm hearing about murders every day. Thankfully, the internet is here. Thankfully, we can communicate quicker. These things have always gone on. Thankfully, they are going on less now than they have since 1978. This is from AllGov, by the way. I didn't make it up. Homicides and other violent crimes in the U.S. have fallen to a level not seen in more than 45 years. The Federal Bureau of Investigation reported that the number of murders and non-negligent homicides, that means purpose, last year fell by 4.4% to 14,196, the lowest total since 1968. Remember the days in the 60s, everything, we didn't have to lock our doors? Well, it's the same rate. Why? One of them is so many states are allowing concealed carry. And an armed society is a polite society because you don't know if the 4'10" girl that you're about to rape is about to shoot you if you do. The murder rate has also been dropping and stands at 4.5 per 100,000 in the population. Firearms were used in 69% of the murders in 2013. You might think that sounds bad, but look up the number of times that firearms save lives. It's astronomical. Violent crimes, a category that includes murder, also dropped to 4.4% to 1.16 million last year. Not since 1978, when there were 1.09 million violent crimes, has that figure been so low. The rate of violent crime also went down by 5.1% to 365.9 per 100,000. The Chicago Tribune noted that the rate has fallen every year since 1994. And there was more good news in crime statistics. Rape fell by 6.3%, robberies dropped by 2.8%, and property crimes have declined by 4.1%. So we're seeing less robberies, rapes, property crimes, murders, homicides, and all of that. And yet the United States jails more people than any other country in the world. Don't let them tell you that we are worse than ever. You want to factor something else in? Take thug culture out of the equation and watch how far violent crimes fall. That's fact. And I don't care if you're a white thug, a black thug, a Mexican thug, an Asian thug, however you're doing it, you are despised. I'm going to move on out of the police news here before I go into the break and finish the last three stories. Everybody is mad about this. My mother-in-law to be wanted to make absolutely sure that I heard about that. That would be grandmother-in-law to be certain I heard about this. This has everybody in an uproar. Paul Joseph Watson, third Gruber video reveals how the administration sought to hide the Obamacare tax. So basically, it's the same thing. We just tax insurance companies and they pass it on in higher prices. What this Jonathan Gruber had said was they deliberately masked the tax in order to get people who he referred to as stupid American voters to vote for it and to come out in favor of it by saying they're going to tax the insurance companies. Of course, there's no law that prevents the insurance companies from raising passing the prices on to you. So they snuck it through that way, and they laughed at the American voter for being stupid. Then he tried to cover and say that wasn't what he meant, except that we now have 3 references of him doing it. Despite claiming that he spoke off the cuff when he said that a lack of transparency was key in fooling stupid Americans to accept the passage of Obamacare, a third video has emerged of MIT economics professor Jonathan Gruber, in which he admits that the administration exploited Americans' lack of economic understanding to hide the fact that the ACA was a direct tax on the consumer. And this is from November 5th of 2012. It says that their lack of economic understanding would be exploited so as to make them think that the evil insurance companies were the ones being taxed, when in reality the companies simply passed the higher prices on to the customer. He's laughing at having stolen our insurance. This is the quote, I have been making this speech for 12 years. 12 years, again, before Obamacare. This is back while they were still talking about Hitlercare. I have been making this speech for 12 years, and people would come up to me and say, but wait a second, you're going to tax my health insurance. And I'd say, no, no, no. We're going to tax subsidies on your health insurance. And they'd go, you're going to tax my health insurance. And you just can't get through. It's politically impossible. So despite the fact we thought we might get this as part of the law, it was going to be dead. So what did he do? He lied. Listen, until a second Massachusetts hero arose, John Kerry. I could use another word for hero. John Kerry said, no, we're not going to tax your health insurance. We're going to tax those evil insurance companies. We're going to impose a tax that if they sell health insurance that's too expensive, we're going to tax them. And conveniently, the tax rate will happen to be the marginal tax rate on the income tax code. So basically, it's the same thing. We just tax insurance companies, and they pass on the higher prices. That offsets the tax break we get into being the same thing. It's very clever, basic exploitation of the lack of understanding of the American voter. So John Kerry and this rotten mongrel Gruber were laughing about the fact that you had insurance before this and now you don't have any. That's the boat I'm in too. He helped craft Obamacare, and he was paid $400,000 to utilize dirty tricks to hide the fact that the ACA was a de facto tax being imposed on Americans. And he's done so on 3 separate occasions. They're laughing at having duped you. Oh, but I support Obama. John Kerry. Friends, you're listening to The Correct Views. Sam I.B. DeGangi reporting for The Media Speaks. I've got 3 stories to get to, including the Dumdy of the day, so don't go away. I just want to invite you to check out the Arcadia Grill that has some of the best food that you have ever eaten. They are located in downtown Canton. Make sure you go there. Get the ravioli. Enjoy the Italian bread, which is amazing. Go to the bar. Get a drink. Your drink will be made perfectly. Friends, that's the Arcadia Grill in Canton, Ohio. I absolutely had to get to this because while I know that things are oftentimes used against us in technology, let's not forget we are not Amish. We do, in fact, have to stand behind science to help us in some ways. Are they poisoning us with over-vaccination? Yes. But does that mean that all vaccines are always bad? No. Well, this falls under that category. CNET.com. Robot can perform brain surgery through the patient's cheek. Well, I don't know. I guess since we're not paying enough money to drive on the roads now that we're not buying gas, how are the brain surgeons going to make money now that more people don't need their skull cut open? We're going to need an extra tax in Obamacare. For the percentage of epilepsy patients, medication is less effective at controlling seizures, or it doesn't work at all. For those patients, there is another option, brain surgery. This is usually a deeply invasive procedure. I would say so. One of the great fears. It says wherein the section of the patient's brain is either removed, stimulated, or disconnected. Afterward, recovery can take up to 3 months. Seems faster than I expected. A robot 5 years in the making. Keep in mind they spent 12 years getting ready to lie to you for Obamacare. This was 5 years in the making by researchers at Vanderbilt University, may be in line to make the surgery less time-consuming, less evasive, and with a shorter recovery time. This is amazing news, especially with them thinking that cancer could be hitting people in numbers of 8 to 10 within the next 25 years. Thank you, nuke plants. The area of the brain involved in epileptic seizures is the hippocampus, which is located in the lower regions of the brain. The surgical robot, it goes on, developed by mechanical engineering graduate David Comer and mechanical engineering associate professor Eric Barth, enters the brain from underneath by going through the patient's cheek, carefully negotiating gaps in the bone. This is not only a shorter route, it also avoids drilling through the skull. So we have wonderful news here. I hope, how many of you are still listening? Leave a comment. We have wonderful news here. The working prototype involved the development of shape memory alloy needle. That is an alloy that can remember its original shape and return to it when heated after being deformed. That can operate along curving paths. The robot also needed to be able to be operated from inside an MRI machine, which creates a strong magnetic field. The resultant needle is created from nickel titanium. It's also known as nitinol, an alloy that has both shape and memory and is non-ferromagnetic, making it comparable to MRI machines. Brain surgery through the cheek. That is just awesome. Obviously, a doctor still had to oversee it. That's even better news. You just don't want these things out slinging needles willy-nilly. All jokes aside, that is some of the best news that I've been able to report here in a very long time. I hope you guys are as excited about its possibilities as I am. Another instance of China overstepping its bounds, and also another instance of Islam never being able to get along with anybody. I don't mean the Islamic people, I mean the Islamic leaders oftentimes, and not the practitioners who are just like you and I. They just want to be left alone. Uyghur Muslims were President Osama bin Laden's CIA, ISA, Afghan training camps. China has imprisoned around 24 Uyghur Muslim leaders in the western region of Xinjiang for illegal religious activities. And it goes on to mention that Al Jazeera didn't bother to say that Uyghur Muslims were present at, like I just said, the CIA with Osama bin Laden. Let's face it, the Americans have backed some really crappy people, and it's, as Ron Paul said, called it blowback. It has come back to haunt us on more than one occasion. But you also have to remember that these Islamists, no matter who funded them, let me give you $100. What, you're going to go out and kill somebody with it? Because if you would, you're scum. I don't care who gave them the money, whether it was the U.S. or Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny. What matters is that they're using it to blow up Chinese people. And again, you find this over and over again. So many problems in the world are a result of the fact that the leaders of Islam cannot get along with their neighbors, oftentimes other leaders of Islam. It's just a simple fact. Guys, Infowars.com, a student suspended over pellet gun photo on Facebook. Steve Watson. Parents say the punishment violates the First Amendment as the image was taken at home. I would say it violates the First Amendment. I would also say you have a Second Amendment right to carry a gun, and therefore you have a right to film yourself holding it. What is this? They were not in school. Parents have slammed school officials for violating freedom of speech, as 2 Massachusetts students were suspended for 10 days after uploading a photo of themselves holding pellet guns on Facebook. The students, aged 16 from Middleborough, were pictured holding the airsoft guns, toy replicas that fire plastic pellets, while wearing formal dress intended for Bristol Plymouth Regional Technological School's homecoming dance. The picture was taken at their homes, not on school grounds, nor during school hours. They didn't make any threats either. We already have laws against that. We wanted something unique and different instead of using flowers like everyone else. We were like, let's use something we like to do when the weekend as a prop, said Tito Velez, one of the students, adding, here we are, one photo is getting us almost expelled. That's because the school is ridiculous, so make sure you call this school and protest. The school superintendent claims that the action was taken because it caused a disruption after someone reported the Facebook image to school officials. They have a Second Amendment right to everything they did and a First Amendment right that goes with it. There is nothing disruptive about it. It has nothing to do with free speech, no. Their behavior caused a significant disruption in the school, said Superintendent Richard Gross, so you need to call and let him know you think he's an idiot. We had our homecoming event on Friday, and following that, the students were looking at Facebook, and of course it caused a tumult in the building. That's because you don't teach anything about rights anymore. It doesn't make any sense. The father, Jamie Pariah, the other students pictured, called the action ridiculous, adding that basically it's a toy gun. It wasn't done on school property. It was done in the house. So you can now get suspended for things you do in your own home that are perfectly legal things. It's nothing to do with school or scaring or where whatever it is. Direct quote here. This is like making a molehill out of an anthill. It's an odd way to word that. I don't think it's the right call at all. Getting a day off or a warning is more than sufficient than going to this extent. That's the bottom line. You shouldn't get a day off either. These people capitulate to this over and over again. That's how we got here. They were called into questioning by the police. The parents didn't know about it. Absolutely ridiculous. I said they took me to an empty room and searched everything I had, my bags and my clothes. Guys, call Mr. Gross. Call that school district and let them know how outraged you are. And then do the same thing to the school here, because right here we've got the Dumdy of the day. This one I know I am going to regret not keeping for a candidate for Dunce Cap of the Month. I just know I'm going to regret this. Truth Revolt. Veterans Day program canceled because of irrational fear of the 21-gun salute. They don't teach what the 21-gun salute means. They don't honor the veterans with it. Instead, they move these heroes to a parking lot at a restaurant to keep them away from their children as if they are a danger. And we're talking blanks. We don't shoot bullets in the air like they do in the Middle East so often, because bullets come down and hit people in the head. The Eau Claire School District in Wisconsin had canceled its annual Veterans Day program because of their irrational fear of the 21-gun salute. The first 3 people to leave in my comment line proof that you sent a complaint or videotape yourself complaining to the EAU Claire, CLAIRE School District in Wisconsin, I'll donate $5 to your favorite charity. The Iowa Firearms Coalition reports that the school districts are afraid to have the 21 gun salute on school grounds because of the use of firearms, despite the fact that the guns are mechanically altered so they cannot fire real bullets, just blanks. So no, it can't even be put in as a prank or as a mistake. There are just some conditions that we have to adhere to, and the shooting of guns, even with blanks, is something we don't feel is appropriate given society and the concerns that we have, that the community has, and that the school premises has, said Tim Libum, the executive director of administration for the Eau Claire School District. That is true boneheadedness in its highest. It is an honor to even witness these things. Kay Olson of the Eau Claire Patriotic Council says there was no compromise with the school, and now the Veterans Program will be moved to the local Burger King. She said, I was hoping maybe we could find a compromise, but when it comes to weapons, there was no compromise. The IFC recaps the situation in a history of the veterans group Eau Claire. Since the early 1930s, vets groups in the Eau Claire area have held the Veterans Day ceremony at a local school since the 30s. You see what they do, people? They want to trash and destroy every tradition that we have in order to get us into this one world system. Part of the ceremony includes a 21-gun salute, while the UN has a gun tied in the knot, so you're not allowed to do it. This school year district officials told the veterans that there would be no compromise. If they planned to do a 21-gun salute, they would not be allowed on school property. Instead of providing students with the valuable learning opportunity about the nation's history, the Eau Claire veterans are now forced to hold their veterans ceremony in